Welcome everyone to the last episode of this mini-series about agentic engineering, specifically with Svelte. Now, up until this moment, we basically talked about how to build a production application with AI, how to review the code with AI, but now that we are in production, what do? We stop using AI? Well, not yet. Because in this episode, we're going to learn how to set up observability and how to use AI to interpret and to fix bugs directly coming from the production observability. Before we begin, a small presentation is due. I am Paolo Ricciuti. I lead the Svelte team at Mainmatter, which is an engineering consultancy that specializes in Svelte, Rust, Ember. We help our clients go through their toughest challenges with those languages or to adopt them in the first place. Most importantly, we helped a lot of customers to set up their system so that their engineer could ship code faster without compromising on code quality. And that's exactly what we're doing nowadays with agents. We set up all our systems around agents so that they can ship faster and get the productivity boost of AI without compromising on code quality. So let's jump right into today's episode and let's see how AI can help us even in production. Welcome everyone to the last episode of this mini-series about agentic engineering, specifically with Svelte. Now, up until this moment, we basically talked about how to build a production application with AI, how to review the code with AI, but now that we are in production, what do? We stop using AI? Well, not yet. Because in this episode, we're going to learn how to set up observability and how to use AI to interpret and to fix bugs directly coming from the production observability. Before we begin, a small presentation is due. I am Paolo Ricciuti. I lead the Svelte team at Mainmatter, which is an engineering consultancy that specializes in Svelte, Rust, Ember. We help our clients go through their toughest challenges with those languages or to adopt them in the first place. Most importantly, we helped a lot of customers to set up their system so that their engineer could ship code faster without compromising on code quality. And that's exactly what we're doing nowadays with agents. We set up all our systems around agents so that they can ship faster and get the productivity boost of AI without compromising on code quality. So let's jump right into today's episode and let's see how AI can help us even in production. Now, despite the fact that you might pay attention to it, despite the fact that you are a very good engineer, you will likely have a few issues on your project. So it's very good to have observability inside your application, and you can do that with products like Sentry. So we want to have observability into the product itself. And the best part is that Sentry also has an AI offering. And this AI offering basically allows you to use the logs that you collect in Sentry to fix the problems that you might get. So Sentry actually has a few skills available. Sentry is very focused on AI. So they have an MCP server so that you can connect your agent to your Sentry account so that you can say, please fix this issue, for example. But they also have a few skills. And there are two types of official Sentry skills. The setup skill to set up Sentry in your project with no manual configuration required. And the workflow skill to debug and fix issue in your project. Now, obviously, right now we need to set up everything. So let's install this skill to set up Sentry. So we copied over the command to install the skill, and let's do this. And now we can actually select which skill we actually need. We definitely want the browser SDK. We definitely want this probably. definitely the Node SDK too, the Svelte SDK, and I guess that's it. So we already have the .agent skill, so I think that's fine. We want to install on a project level. There is one alert for Sentry browser SDK. Just for good measure, let's actually check. It has a few warning. It's not really a warning. Yeah, your public key, it's fine because it's a public key. Okay, proceed with the installation. Yes. So this is done now, and we can actually launch our open code to start the setup. It's a very simple prompt. It's just saying, can you set up Sentry within this project? Don't worry about environment variables. I will take care of those separately. If it requires specific setup to be able to use Seer or their AI features, please include that setup. So we are in plan mode, so it should build a plan first so that we can review it. Okay, let's take a look at the plan. I kind of like these. So something that I don't like, basically Sentry gives you this to basically like set up everything you need to set up for Sentry automatically. So let's actually do it. Yes, you want to enable logs to send your application logs to Sentry. Yes. No for the moment. It created a bunch of files. It created the instrumentation server. It created the hooks.server.ts. It created the client. It changed the vit config. All of this are all stuff that were part of the plan. So we can now basically tell the agent, we are now asking the agent to not include them in the plan. All right, I would say we can start with the plan, but let's start a new session. We can switch to build. Please implement plan at. Let's see how it goes.
One eternity later.
All right, for the moment, the setup is probably what we will stop at now, so that we know that Sentry is working. So I'm gonna push this up and check if Sentry is working, and then we're gonna explore how we can actually make all of this work within Sentry. So we are gonna introduce some errors specifically for this, and then we're gonna catch it with Sentry and fix it with Sentry and see how it will work. Small interjection, because I recorded this in 2 separate days, but basically what I did is I complete the setup, I merged it, and then I tried to generate one edition, and I got an error. So let's see how it went. So we tried to generate a run, and we actually got an error. Cannot read properties of undefined, read info. We have a bunch of stuff here, like all tags and feature flags and stuff like that. We know where the error is happening. We have the trace. So given that we also enabled observability inside SvelteKit, we now can know specifically in which part of the application we got. So this is already a bunch of stuff that will give us a way better way of dealing with these possible bugs. But obviously we are here to actually learn about the AI part of Sentry. And it is very, very interesting because basically what Sentry has is this Seer autofix, which is an agent that has all the context of your code base, all the traces, all the errors and stuff like that. So it basically has a bunch of information about how your application works, and it can explore those with AI so that you can actually get some information back. So before agentic engineering, you wanted observability into your application because you wanted to know if your application was failing for some reason. During the period of agentic engineering, you want observability not only because you want to be able to see when something goes wrong inside your application, but you can also leverage AI to basically have a bunch of parallel workers that whenever you have an issue of some sort, you can launch Sentry and start the analysis, and it can start to work on a fix on that problem. So let's actually try. So we have this type error, cannot read properties of undefined, reading info. Once again, we have the part of the code that is erroring out, and we have a seer autofix, and we can start our analysis. So now seer will actually go and investigate the whole code base. It will correlate the traces, it will correlate the other errors that it sees inside the application. Obviously, it will do whatever AI do, so it will search the web, it will use their knowledge to figure out the root cause of the option, so of the error. So this will already give you a good first hint. So let's see what Seer is saying. So like the open code client is configured with response style data, but prompt structure accesses response.info, which only exists on the full response object. Why did this happen? Type error accessing response.info in prompt structure because response is undefined. Client.session.prompt returns undefined or just raw data instead of a full response object with an info field. The open code client is created with response style data, which strips the wrapper and returns only the data payload. Prompt structured was written expecting the full SDK response shape, response.info.error, response.info.structured, not the unwrapped data only shape. There is a mismatch between the SDK client configuration, response style data, and the response shape expected by prompt structured. Run the sandbox runner against any source during the choose linked stage. The open code client is initialized with response style data. Prompt structured calls client session.prompt. Accessing response info error throws type error because response is undefined. Now, I'm not sure if this is the right fix, actually. Because, this was working before, right? So what I think happened is that if we go back to the runner.js, what I think happened is that we are still using the open code free provider, basically. And if the free credits that you get with open code expires, the SDK doesn't return an actual object, and that's a problem. Let's actually create a quick project just to test. The issue is that it's not even returning info, right? And I think the reason why this is happening is because of how open code handles when you basically finished your credits, your free credits in open code. So, are you happy with this root cause? No. In this case, to be fair, like to give Sentry a bit of slack, Seer works better when you have a lot of data. So like if we run this application for, 500 times, and all 500 times return a slightly different error because of a slightly different way of doing stuff, maybe there were some traces for when it worked, like Seer maybe would have been able to figure out what was the problem. In this case, this application is currently not being used in production. So like it is much more difficult for Seer to actually fix it. But this was not the right cause. Give Seer additional context to improve this root case. We tested the SDK, and when response style is equal to data is correct to directly access response.info without doing response.data.info. So once again, basically this is just like your agent in your application. And in this case, again, it was not very helpful because this is a very difficult problem to debug, and because it does not have a lot of data. But you can see how for smaller errors, for example, let's say that you forgot something in your front end and you get an error inside your Sentry, you can literally spin up an agent that has all the context of your application and can literally see where the error is happening and when it's happening, and it can correlate multiple traces, and it can find the root cause, find a fix for the bug, and even open a PR for it. So let's see what new root cause. Client session prompt returns undefined when the API has no data field in error response, and response style data unwraps to undefined. Response is undefined when response.info is accessed in prompt structured. The SDK unwraps the API response to return only the data field. When session prompt fails, model error, or timeout, the API response has no data field. The SDK unwraps the missing data field. The code assumes response is always a defined object and does not null check before accessing response.info. Create an open code client with response style. In a scenario where the model session returns an error response, no data field, observe that response is undefined due to SDK unwrapping, the code access response.info, blah, blah, blah. I think this is a much better root cause. So are you happy with this root cause? Yes, make a plan. And we can see that now Seer Autofix will actually come up with a plan to fix this issue, which is very, very nice, right? So add a null check for the response in prompt structure before accessing response.info, and throw a descriptive error if undefined. Guard against undefined response, propagate as structured error. Yes, write a code fix. So this will actually implement the change. So it's a very easy if response is equal to undefined. Well, not super happy with these code changes because you can just write response is equal to null instead. This is one of the way in which Sentry can help you auto-fix something. But another interesting bit about Seer is that Seer can also help you ask questions about your traces, ask questions about your code, and as some sort of agent, just like open code, that also has access to your traces and all of your observability issues. So you can see that there is this ask Seer, and this Seer agent is actually something that is less about finding the root cause of some issue, but you can also just ask a few questions. Is there any root that could become problematic in this application? So we can ask, and this will basically launch Seer that will try to explore the code base, that will try to explore the traces that we have and the code that it has available, and it will try to come up with something that could help us. So let's see. Okay, so we have, yes, the most concerning root is /root with a P90 of 4.7 seconds. The underlying culprit is the workflow step launch source sandbox, which has a P90 of 30 seconds. driving latency across the app. Additionally, there are several active errors concentrated around AI LLM related process. So those are the errors that we've seen. We actually introduced these ones. These all points to a fragility in the AI-powered news processing workflow. The post route also has a P90 of 21 seconds, which is the workflow step handler and likely the entry point of all those failures. I'm not sure about this. Obviously, you can actually ask questions about where it gets the information. So we can actually say launch source sandbox is not invoked by the root. Where did you get that information? So as you can see, basically right now, I'm kind of querying the data about all the stack traces, and I'm doing it with natural language. So this is very powerful because you have seen how hard it is to actually read some stack traces. So the trace preview is very, very nice, and you can read a lot into this if you know how to read them. But they are not super easy to read. You need to figure out, okay, this is a trace, there is an interaction, there is a navigation, this is an HTTP server, stuff like that. So as you can see, it's not super easy to understand. And one of the best features about Seer is exactly the fact that you can actually basically chat with your data, and the AI will convert from your natural language to a series of pinpointed queries. So that's very nice. So we can see the root case is clear. The server-side get only takes 82 milliseconds. That's fine. The problem is entirely on the browser side. The browser is spending 4.3 seconds just waiting for the server to send back the response. This is a slow server response cold start issue, likely from the app being hosted on Vercel and hitting a cold serverless function. The server-side SvelteKit trace itself looks healthy, so the delay happens before the SvelteKit handler even starts, pointing to Vercel cold start as the culprit rather than any code in the root. If this is a recurring pattern, you could mitigate by enabling Vercel fluid compute or keeping function warms, moving heavier initialization like outside up out of the critical path. So as you can see, obviously, as usual with AI, you need to pay attention to what the AI is suggesting you, but it's very nice that I can just ask the AI, okay, I want to know which route could be problematic, I want to know which route is the slowest, and I want you to figure out why is the slowest, and it can just go fetch all of your traces, match the browser part of the trace with the server part of the trace, and figure out what is the potential problem. So I think this is another very nice application. However, you might say okay, what if I don't want to use Sentry? I'm used to work in my terminal. Well, that's a good news for you because Sentry also has very good integration with your agents. There is a Sentry MCP server, so if you want, you can just add this. You can do npx add MCP. This MCP server has a series of methods that allow you to interact with your Sentry. So you will need to authenticate, but once you've done that, you have the ability to list organization, teams, project, issues. And so you can actually say something like, hey, please fix the issue number 1000. And you set it up so that it's only scoped to one project, for example, which is also very nice. And another interesting bit is that Sentry, if you don't want to use the MCP server, because as we talked in a previous episode, sometimes the MCP server can bloat your context and stuff like that. Sentry also ships with a CLI that basically can do everything that the MCP server can do. And so you can just npm install global Sentry. And once you do that, you can log in with the authentication, and you have like all the commands like Sentry issue list, Sentry issue explain, that actually use Seer to analyze the issue. So like you can basically use whatever AI capabilities that Sentry has available within your agent. So this kind of make the two worlds collide, so that you can maybe use, I don't know, a very powerful model to analyze what Seer Autofix is analyzing and which traces is mixing. And so like you can basically mix and match the two. Sentry is being very, very on the edge with this AI revolution. They are doing a lot to make sure that Sentry works very, very well with agents, to the point of creating their own agent that can help you like figuring out your traces and your issues. And I think this is very, very cool. So once again, this is just one of the tools. What I want you to get out of this episode is not you should use Sentry and that's it, but you should set up your project with some observability, and you should choose an observability platform that allows you to use these values, like the values that you get out of the observability and tracing, to feed this information as context to your agent so that you can fix your issues in a much nicer way. Thanks for watching this series. Like this episode is the closing episode, so if you want, you can actually go to github.com/mainmatter/news aggregator to look at the code. Obviously, feel free to open any issue, feel free to clone it. You can actually use the application on their relay, and obviously, if you have any feedback and if you have any questions, and if you need help to set up your project to work well with agents, feel free to visit mainmatter.com, and we can definitely help you improve your productivity with agents in the best possible way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.